How's it? Sean from Combat Simulations. Basic interface, a map and terrain. This is the tutorials we're going to be doing today, the stuff we're going to be doing. Alright, so before we get started, please subscribe to my channel. It's free, and also leave comments and suggestions. And watch my videos, helps me a lot. And like them too, and also share them, helps me even more. Alright, so I've decided to do the basic interface and the map terrain tutorial all in one video. And these I'll do with individual videos. Because, the basic interface just covers moving. It covers basically the interface, the mouse moving and the scrolling. And then it has some moving and firing elements in it. And the terrain's quite important because it's got a brief discussion of terrain types. So these two I'll do together, and then the next tutorial will be on units and markers, outline of play, activations, and spotting. Alright, cool. Basic interface, overview of the main interface windows of the game, brief introduction to selecting, moving, and firing with units. Let's get started. Alright, so here we are, the tutorial. Let's begin. Okay, so I'm going to read you see here where the information, this is how you go to the next step. So I'll read that, then perform the actions on the side. So I'll read this and then do the actions. Alright, so welcome to the Lock and Load Tactical Digital. Okay, the tutorial will give you an overview of the basic interface of the game and some simple actions by your units. Right, next step. Moving the camera. There are 3 ways to move the camera around the map. You can use the keyboard, or move the mouse cursor to the edge of the screen, or click and hold the middle mouse button. The default keys to move the camera are WASD. You can zoom in and out with the mouse or the keyboard. The default keys are equals and minus to zoom in and out. So I'm using the mouse button. You see, I can zoom right in. I can get really close. How's that? How's that? And then I can zoom right out with the mouse button. Okay, then move left with a scroll left, scroll right. Everybody sort of knows what this is. And yeah, and then the middle mouse button. If I hold it down, I can move around the map. Okay, next step. All right, one of the interface windows, obviously this basic interface that's lit up, is surrounded by a pulsing outline. Correct. Okay, its default position is the upper right of the screen. Okay, there it is there. The window is the objectives window. It shows the name of the scenario, the current turn, and the scenario's victory objective. The objectives that have been currently achieved are marked with an X. Okay, so there's the name of it. There's the turn, 1 of 3. The Americans must capture 2 victory X's, and we have 1 hex already because it's got an X next to it, F7. All right, next step. In this example, we see that the Americans have captured F7, a building to the to the southwest. An American counter is currently on it, but we have yet to capture G6, which is 1 hex directly northeast of it. So there we got it there. Okay, we've actually captured that. We haven't captured, that's G7, and this is F7. Okay, next step. Let's move on to the next window. Okay, the control window is used for passing. It's this window that's highlighted here where my mouse is. The control window is used for passing or ending an impulse, for example, to finish your turn. Other buttons may appear here for actions that involve off-board units, such as snipers or reinforcements. The current game phase, such as operation phase or rally phase, is also shown here for quick reference. So it gives us a turn 1 of 3 and also tells us operation phase, and we can pass. And he says reinforcements come here, which they do. All right, next step. The message window, which is at the bottom here, you can see the pulsating highlighted. This window is the message window. The informational messages from the game or chat messages from an online opponent appear in this window. Next step. This button, well, this hex here, this part over here, this window, this unit selection window, they call it, see, it's pulsating. This is the unit selection window. It's probably the most used of these windows. When a hex is selected, all the units in the hex are shown in this window. Units can be individually selected in this window, right? Actions that selected units can take appear as buttons above the window. So obviously they come buttons over here. And finally, some interface toggles and tools are on the right side of the window. Must be these toggles and tools. Okay, good. So you click on them and then they highlight. These are toggles and tools, and they come, and then this shows all. There's the hex selected, and there's the unit in there. Okay, good. Right now, I5 is selected. So it's this one here. This is the selected hex. Note the red border around the hex on the map. That hex contains one American squad that you can see on the map board, and the unit selection window also shows that squad. All right, so there's it's highlighted with red, and it also shows at the bottom, and it's got a red highlight around it. All right, next step. Now left click on hex I3. Okay, must be there's the circle around it, which has one German squad in it. Okay, so now left click on it, which has one German squad in it. Let's left click. The hex I3 on the map is now surrounded by a red outline to indicate it is the currently selected hex. And the German squad is also shown in the unit selection window. Now let's do some simple things with our units. Okay, so it is selected. There's the red icon around there, and the German unit is shown in the unit's hex. It's shown in the selection window. All right, next step. Okay, there are two pulsating icons. Okay, there's a pulsating hex and a pulsating hex. Okay, on the map, which tell us which hexes contain units that are eligible to act in this impulse. These are hexes I5 and F7. The Americans on I6 are not eligible because they've already moved this turn, and the hexes with the German units are not eligible because it's not their turn. So these two are eligible to move. This one is not because it's already moved this turn. There's a movement mark on it, so it's not eligible, and it's not the German's turn, so he can't be selected. So that's why those two are selected. Okay, good. Now let's move the squad in F7. Okay, over there, F7, let's zoom in. To grab the remaining victory hex. Okay, left click on F7 to select the hex. We did. The eligible units in F7 are automatically selected when the hex is selected. Note that both the counter on the board and the counter in the unit selection box have red outlines around them to indicate that they are selected. Okay. All right, so there's the red outline that it's selected, and there's the outline on the hex. Okay, next step. Now move the cursor over G6. Okay, it's over G6. Now you'll see a red line, see a line extending to G6, and a pulsing move cursor above a mouse icon. Okay, good. Got that. This indicates that left clicking on G6 will move the selected units to that hex. Left click on G6. Okay, yes sir. Done. We've captured the victory hex. Notice that after you move, the pulsating outline on I5 has disappeared. Now he's talking about this here, I5. Okay, so we notice it disappeared. Okay, it's disappeared. Once we move the American squad that was on F7 over here, the other squad on I5 is no longer eligible to be activated. Other tutorials will go into activations in more detail. Okay, we noticed that. We could continue to move the active squad, but we want to leave it here to guard the victory hex. Okay, as there are no other eligible units to activate, end the impulse by clicking on the end impulse button in the control window. He's talking about this one and he's highlighting it. Okay, we hit the end. Okay, now it's the German player's impulse. Lock and Load Tactical proceeds in impulses. One side activates one or more of the hexes of units, then the other side does the same. Okay, if a player doesn't want to activate any units in the current impulse, perhaps waiting for the opponent to do something first, they pass. After the third pass in a row, the turn ends and a new turn begins with all the units ready to activate once more. Okay, so you can pass on. You can either move your units or you can pass. So if you pass, then the next impulse, then the Germans can move. Your opponents can move, or you can move. So you don't have to move. Okay, but you can if you want to. If there are units you need to move. Okay, so the German impulse. All right, the Germans have one squad that has already. Okay, let's just zoom out here so we can see the map. The Germans already have one squad that has already moved this turn. It's this squad there where my mouse is in I3, and one that has not done anything yet in G1 over there. But let's say they want to wait a bit to see what the Americans are going to do. The pass button in the control window says pass 1. It does. Since this would be the first pass since either player activated the units, press the pass button now to pass the impulse back to the Americans. Okay, so we're going to press it. Now it's gone back to the Americans. It's back to the Americans now. Note that the pass button now says pass 2. Okay, it does say pass 2 because if the Americans pass, it'll be 2 passes in a row. But we want to do something. There is one unit eligible to activate. That's the squad on I5. Left click on I5 to select the hex and the squad. We're going to do that. Now move the mouse, let's zoom in a bit, over the Germans that are out in the open in I3. Okay, there. Indicating, okay, now there are now two icons which hover over the German unit, indicating that a left click will fire and a right click will move into melee. We want to stay in a safe building, so we want to stay here. So let's left click at the Germans. Okay, so we're going to fire. So if we press left click, it'll shoot. We'll shoot. All right, brilliant. You now know the bare basics of selecting and moving and firing your units. However, it's highly recommended that you proceed to the next tutorial to learn more about the game. We're going to do that, don't worry. Okay, next. All right, so that's the basic interface. Okay, overview. Map terrain. Overview of the map and terrain, moving the game cameras, how to read terrain information from the terrain window, brief discussion of terrain types. Let's begin the tutorial. All right, so the map and the terrain. This tutorial will go over the game map and terrain types of terrain and types of terrain in the game. If you have a copy of the 5.4.1 Officer Edition rulebook, it roughly follows the infantry gameplay narrative on page 156. All right, next turn. So we are looking at a single, this is the map there, we are looking at a single geomorphic map panel here. Map 15, geomorphic maps can be combined with each other to make a larger playing area. The map panel is lettered with hex rows AXX to OXX from left to right and numbered XX1 to XX8 from top to bottom. The edges of the maps are half hexes, which function as whole hexes, whether or not they are matted to another map's edge or not. So even these half hexes here are functioning as full hexes. All right, good. Each hex is approximately 50 meters wide. Thus, a map is about 400 meters by 700 meters. So each of these hexes represents 50 meters of terrain. All right, good. Moving the camera. As we mentioned in tutorial 1, there are 3 ways to move the game camera around the map. You could use the keyboard, or move the mouse cursor or the edge or to the edge of the screen, or click and hold the middle mouse button. The default keys are WASD. Okay, so we know all about that. Boom, boom, boom. You can zoom in and zoom out with the mouse. All right, hexes. Each hex has terrain in it. On this map 15, there are the following kinds of terrain, with an example in parentheses: clear, road, forests, light woods, low crops, cemetery, wheat field, and brush. All right. Okay. There are also 2 types of buildings: heavy construction or stone. All right. F5, which is this one here. This is heavy construction or stone, and light construction or wooden. F3. So basically with a black dot. So anything, what he's saying here, okay, what he's saying is anything that's a red dot is heavy construction stone, or heavy construction or stone, and anything with a black dot is light construction or wooden. Okay. There are also hexside terrain. There's also hexside terrain. There are 2 types on this map: walls and hedges. Okay. You can easily see what terrain is in a particular hex by turning on the terrain info window. Okay, let's select that. And there we go. There's the terrain info window. All right. Okay, now move the mouse cursor over various hexes in the map. As you move the mouse over the hexes in the map, the terrain info window will show the details of its terrain. Okay, so that does all this. You can see this window over here. Now let's go over some of the details now. Hover over F2. Okay, so we're going down to F2. There's F2. Okay. The terrain info window shows the hex name and all the types of terrain in the hex. In this case, it's only clear terrain. The window also shows the terrain effects charts, TEC, entries for all the terrain in the hex. Okay, good. So there's the terrain chart down there as it explains it to you. Next step. Okay, so F2 is clear, so it is open terrain. There are 4 movement costs shown, T, O, and R, and are for various types of vehicles. And we'll go into that in a later tutorial. L is for leg units. Okay, we can see that. You see the terrain there says L. So clear terrain costs 1 movement point for leg units, or i.e. infantry to enter into. So there's the open, there's the cost of it 1. The next column is the terrain modifier, the target modifier, a defensive bonus for units in this terrain when they are fired upon. Clear terrain has a target modifier of 0, so there's no bonus. The final entry is the obstacle height, which is for clear terrain, which for clear terrain is nothing. Okay, so there's the target modifier up there. See how it changes. If we move it to the building, it becomes +4, and the height is 1. There's a height of 0, and there isn't a height for open. All right, next step. Now let's look at another. Hover over, okay, so we'll go down, hover over F5. This is where they got this red circle over. Hex F5 is a heavy construction or stone building. Looking at the terrain info window, it is blocking terrain, costs leg units 2 movement points to enter, is prohibited to all vehicles, has a target modifier 4, very defensible, and has an obstacle height of 1. It is a single-story building. I just want to move this down. There are no multi-story buildings on map 15, but if they were, they would, as they are taller, have an obstacle height of 2. So there it is. You see, it's a HE building that has blocking type terrain. You see where it says blocking in this window over here. It says blocking. This prohibited to all types of vehicles, and it has 2 movement points for infantry to move in, and a target modifier of 4 and a height of 1. Okay, good. Just checking that. Now let's look at another one. All right, so we'll go to this one over here. Let's look at G4. Hex G4 contains light woods, which is degrading terrain. Costs 2 movement points for leg units to enter, has a target modifier of +1, and has an obstacle height of 1. The same hex has walls on 4 of its hex sides, and the information for the walls is also shown in the terrain info window. Walls are blocking terrain. Costs an extra +1 movement points for leg units to cross, provides a target modifier of +1, and has an obstacle height of 0. So you see that, yeah, where he says there's this. Okay, let me move this down so we get it. Yeah, see, there it is. It's highlighted on there. So lightwoods is degrading terrain. Uh, it costs that for vehicles. It costs 2 for leg units, infantry to move, +1 target modifier, height of 1, and a wall is blocking, +1 to move into for infantry, and +1 as a target modifier. Okay, good. What does type mean? There are 3 types of terrain: open, degrading, and blocking. Terrain types influence line of sight and determine if the hex is spotted. Only units in spotted hexes can be fired at. More on line of sight, more on LOS and spotting in a later tutorial. Okay, good. Open terrain hexes such as clear or road hexes are just that, open. Open hexes do not inhibit line of sight and are always spotted. Open hexes do not have target modifiers and thus provide no benefit to units being fired upon while in such hexes. So it means this type of thing. This is all open. Even though it's got blocking, it's open. So there's no modifiers. It costs 1, and it provides a line of sight. It's always spotted. All right, next step. Degrading terrain hexes such as light woods, brush, and low crops degrade or hinder line of sight, and are not spotted unless units in the hex perform an action, okay, such as firing or moving, that causes the hex to become spotted. Degrading hexes usually have a target modifier and or an effect on fire through or into the hex. Okay, so this is degrading hex. You see, it does have a target modifier, but not all degrading hex has a target modifier. So this is degrading, but it hasn't got a target modifier, but it costs to move in there. So it just affects line of sight. All right, next. Blocking terrain hexes such as HE buildings, LC buildings, forests, and wheat fields block line of sight and are also not spotted unless units in the hex perform an action, such as firing or moving, that causes the hex to become spotted. Blocking hexes almost always have a target modifier or beneficial effect to defending units in the hex. So what it means, obviously, is it blocks line of sight. So if you've got a unit here and he's got a unit there, or he can't see you because it blocks it completely. Degrading doesn't, but these ones do, and it always has a target modifier on it, so it helps with defensive units. All right, good. Every hex has a center dot. Okay, a line of sight is traced from the center dot of the firing hex to the center dot of the target hex. Okay, so what that means is, look, there's the center dot, there's the center dot. So when you when they set up fire, the line of sight runs from center dot to center dot. So from that hex to that hex, it would run through these center dots. Okay, but the computer does that for you when you press line of sight. So it gives you what you can see and what you can't see. But it's just nice to know. This is how the board game obviously functions from dot to dot. Okay, so we've covered all the basics of the map. In the next tutorial, we'll go over to all the we will go over all the counters. Okay, good. All right, so those are those two tutorials. Okay, brilliant. So the next tutorial we're going to do units and markers, and then we're going to do outline the play and activations and spotting. All right, cool. I think I covered all of that. Yeah, these tutorials are so good because they're not in depth, but they give you the basics. You see how intuitive they are, and they give you the basics to get started and get going. Just the basics. So you don't need all those rules, and you can start playing straight away, and then you learn as you go along. All right, Sean from Combat Simulations. Please subscribe to my channel. It's free, and also leave comments and suggestions, and watch my videos and like them as well. It helps me a lot. All right, until our next lock and load tactical tutorial for units and markers. Good day on you.